Should we just jump straight in? Yeah.
Totally.
I guess the idea of this chat is to talk about our recent collaboration on the Valorize membership NFT. I was approached by a moderator on one of the Discords where I was promoting my work. Shout out to Neil. And he was involved with the Valorize DAO and put me forward for this project that they were launching, which was to create a membership NFT series. And Valorize are basically a group of passionate Web3 builders that are trying to create non-code solutions for people wanting to enter this space. Just for context, Dave and I know each other going way, way back as kids in Kenya growing up. Obviously, we've stayed in touch all these years and been working in the creative sector and just always looking for an opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah, we always talked about wanting to do something, and then it didn't really, nothing kind of presented itself, and then this just randomly came up, and it was the perfect project.
I, before this, realized very quickly that I'm a traditional pencil artist, and I was going to need some digital assistance, shall we say, which is why I got in touch with you. Maybe actually you could just say a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'm a graphic designer. I guess I've done a bunch of different things in graphic design because graphic design spans a whole wide gamut. But I guess more specifically, I'm actually in branding, which is where I've spent most of my time in graphic design. But I do love all forms of it. I love typography and yeah, a lot of different types of design. When you reached out, thought, well, maybe I could provide a little bit of the extra skill set on the digital side and apply whatever experience I had doing graphic design to the project.
You know what I'm going to do as well. I'm going to.
I know you always do. You're my biggest.
Are there any examples of your work that people might know about?
There's a handful of pieces. One in particular that Martin is probably referring to. But yeah, I was very fortunate to work at one point in my career. I worked on the Netflix logo, designed the Netflix logo. So that was probably a particular, high point in the career, getting to work on something so large and so, seen by so many people.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a very fun project, something I'm proud of. And continue to see it every time, switch on the TV.
I go to the best when I've got when I need help. It was hugely, hugely helpful because I was never going to be able to fulfill this project without these digital elements. The project was a really cool, ambitious project that spans multiple continents. They worked with 12 artists from all around the world and an art director as well, whose job, we should say Carl, whose job was to try and coordinate all these artists from
wrangle everything together.
Not an enviable task, but I think he did an amazing job because to keep the whole collection with the same look and feel, and that unity was talked about. It was kind of crucial that he was there kind of pulling the strings. We were designing 5 artworks together.
Right.
So there were the 4 initial ones, which were all different rarity levels. So we had what do we have? We had
silver, gold, diamond, and then obsidian.
Obsidian, exactly. And then the final one was a totally different, and it was a 1 of 1. All those had different numbers of them. As you increase in rarity, it goes down. But the final one was a 1 of 1, and that was a totally new drawing. It was something we both were really drawn to because of the theme. Solar punk vision. That's a kind of like a very utopian, optimistic vision of the future. And for the project, they picked 3 animals, which were the ant, the bee, and the octopus. And they were chosen for their coordination, intelligence. Ultimately, they were picked because they represent a lot of the ideals of Web3 and complexity and beauty of Web3.
And they fit in with that solar punk theme a little bit with that marriage between nature and technology and a bright future.
We were given an octopus, which we were both thrilled about. And I started sketching out ideas. The idea was to sort of have these robotic elements or this kind of link between that future tech and animals. From this first round of sketches, everything looked a bit dystopian to me. And that was exactly what we didn't want. We wanted it more utopian. Right. I saw it as like the Swiss Army knife. So each of the tentacles had a different tool, but it all looked a bit too aggressive to me. And at some point, I stumbled upon the idea of the key. Once we'd sort of finalized the design, that became a strong narrative for how the project progressed. In the end, that's what we came up with. And then the next stage was over to you.
Yeah, it was really fun because basically, I mean, you were showing me sketches as you were doing them, which was fun for me to see what you were thinking about and kind of how your mind was working. And I just was kind of enjoying that process and letting you do your thing, and you're unbelievably talented. So it was like you seeing the different ways that you could, use perspective or the different perspectives that might work. And then you came up, with that final one, and because you're, come from that super traditional artist background, we knew that it was going to be an interesting challenge for us to do this tier thing, right? Because it was like, you can't draw a different one for every tier. It already takes you a crazy amount of time to do just one. So we were like, okay, how are we going to make this kind of additive and increase in this interest or whatever for the tiers? The art is so unique and specific to that one drawing. Again, we were like, you can't really just keep adding things on. It wouldn't work in the traditional sense. So me and you were forced to essentially be like, well, how are we going to make these more interesting things? And then obviously you came up with the key, and that started getting both of our brains going. And I think it was very cool. We definitely it was super collaborative in terms of we were kind of chatting via WhatsApp, or, we'd occasionally join a video call and talk through the things. And I think the key opened up this idea of like unlocking, the potential new future or the bright future. And so then we were thinking, okay, well, how else can we bring that to life in the narrative of the different tiers? And I think it was funny because I think we almost had similar thoughts, without even talking, because I remember us both thinking independently, well, maybe we can incorporate code somehow, code being this digital thing that the future's built on and kind of runs technology. We're thinking about the same thing separately. And then we started talking about it. And I can't remember if it came out of conversation or as you were sending me work, as you were doing it, because that's what you were doing. You were kind of doing, as you progressed through the sketching and filling in, you were sending me that. I was kind of like, it gave me an opportunity to experiment on my end rather than having to wait for the final piece. We came up with this idea that the keys were going to unlock portals, and that would essentially symbolize, the strength or the rarity of getting stronger and stronger as the octopus was unlocking more portals with different tentacles, essentially, right? Through the project, it wasn't just a collaboration of skill set, right? Because there was, you bringing traditional, me bringing some digital, but then we were collaborating. I think what was really fun was we were collaborating on the narrative and the story and the concept. So it wasn't just like two skill sets coming together and just execute.
So exciting when that narrative became clear, wasn't it? And that and it was suddenly we were like, right, we see it here.
We felt really good about like, not only was the art going to be exceptional, right, but then there was also this underlying narrative of a concept and a story. And I think that to me is always elevated art. Art that has kind of narrative behind it or story or concept kind of adds more layers to not only just beauty in the aesthetic, but then also kind of like the storytelling. There
was another thing that differentiated between each tier, in addition to the unlocking. But you really, I mean, I remember when you sent me that idea, I was just like, oh, that's genius. It was, I mean, I'll let you tell it, but you were really like tapping into Web3 and that space, and NFTs and little nods to the space with what you came up with.
Yeah. Well, because so it was almost like we had all these different layers that we were trying to push on. So there was the artwork itself, then there was the concept of the keys and the portals, but then obviously we were working, closely together to also differentiate the look and feel of each one. So it wasn't just that it was the same octopus in the same color palette in the same, whatever. And each time it just unlocked a new portal. We knew that would be cool, but it would be even better, obviously. And this was with the help of Carl, we're obviously working with Carl on this as well. Sure. But like, let's change the color palette for each one. and let's also work on the background for each one and incorporate all these different aesthetics. We decided on a color palette for the silver, and then we shifted that for the gold, and we thought, okay, that would be enough, shift for the gold. But then in our conversations, I was bringing up things where, as you said, like little subtle things that were made nods to the crypto space or the NFT space. And so, yeah, it was for Diamond that we decided to kind of pixelate everything at a very fine level too. So it wasn't like we were doing huge pixel art, but it was almost the pixelation in the effect was that little nod towards digital and kind of like old school art. So again, yeah, people, if they notice that and they kind of love that, they would then that would resonate with them. Yeah. And then there was another kind of a motif or a theme that I'd seen done in other collections, and was kind of like a recognized, I guess, a recognized thing in an NFT art space, which was this kind of like, I don't know how it's described, but kind of like a ghosting effect, where essentially it's kind of like almost like an see-through version of the artwork with, highlighted lines and making it feel almost ethereal or ghost-like. And that was always, or kind of seen as like a somewhat rare feature to a lot of art that I'd seen in other NFT collections. So yeah, we decided, okay, for the Obsidian, we're going to go, do that kind of crazy cool effect. And it totally changed, obviously, the octopus in each one. That was really fun to layer in all these things, added to each other.
We wanted to keep it really bright. That was, in keeping with that solar punk theme.
Working together seemed very seamless for me and you. I really trust your perspective on color, and like I just was thrilled to hear you kind of feedback on color. Let's do this, or let's try this other one. Again, we were just like sending things back and forth, and really leaning into our strengths.
That's the point, is that trust there. Like, you trust me with the areas I'm good at, and I trust you implicitly with the areas that you're good at. Totally. And yeah, there was a regular conversation and little ideas here and there, and it just came together so well.
Super proud of like how they came together and how they ended up, and it was just really fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned Carl as well, but we should mention him again. He was 100%. Part of the collaboration as well.
Yeah, exactly. We would reach certain milestones, and then Carl would give his feedback, and we would again kind of all work together, which was nice. And I feel like, again, back to that trust thing, I think Carl did trust us.
Yes.
And kind of like, it was very much a back and forth, which was nice.
Yeah. And I think for him as well, because of my inability to work digital, like the trust was even more important there, because we had to be sure, because once this medium that I use, it's a lovely versatile medium, but once it's fixed, then there's no getting
rid of it.
And that's why, like you said it before, but trying, there was talk initially about trying to add on robotic elements to it, but it just wouldn't work with this texture that you get with this medium is totally different. So I think the way we kind of worked around it to find that lovely narrative of the portal unlocking was just it was really, really cool how that came.
Yeah, it was nice.
And then there was the mycelia, which is
mycelium.
Top level, anyway. Top level rarity, which was the one of one. And so with that one, it was a brand new artwork. And I think from my point of view, I wanted to differentiate it from the other octopus. Straight away, I was like, I think something head-on would look cool. Allow me to get even more detail, because this was like the highest rarity. And thinking about you and what you were going to add to the background and what you'd done already, I wanted to give you enough space to work with in the background so that it wasn't filling the whole page. So I had it like kind of low down. And with that one, we kind of, really sort of like went in with the robotic elements.
Totally,
sort of show that kind of fusion symbiosis. And with the key, I went proper old school, like undeniable key, just a little bit of humor, I think, rather than one of these futuristic keys. I was like, let's go with something that everyone recognizes. And so the unlocking message is really strong there. But that was this one. That's the base drawing that then I scanned and sent to you, and then we'll show you what you came up with.
The cool thing about the mycelia, it was I think we knew that we wanted to dial it all up. Everything needed to be, up to the full max because it was one of one, super exceptional. We'd done the other ones and we knew what the narrative was, we knew what the concept was. So like you just said, when you were, even as you were sketching it out, you had in your mind, okay, we need to leave some space. And the mycelium was kind of taking into consideration all of the lead up to it. We already knew the things that we needed to do to ensure that it was dialed all the way up.
Yeah.
And I think that made it stronger basically from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then, it was fun to kind of just take the idea of the keys and the portals and the colors and everything and just kind of crank it to the max, essentially.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Even as you hold it up as well, it's so cool to like, I don't know. I think, Carl and the whole team recognize this as well. It's so cool to realize that these NFTs, these digital NFTs, there is a physical, beautiful piece of physical art that like actually there's one, it's a tangible thing. It's crazy because that's just not the case a lot of the time. And like, as you hold it up, you actually really do connect back to the fact that this, this digital thing actually has, a physical, it was born out of a physical thing.
It's so cool as well, like to know that you can still do that. You can still work in the NFT space as a traditional, pencil artist like me, because one of the reasons I want to be activist in this space is to make sure that wildlife is considered, that talked about and that people understand that, wildlife is so cool, but also in trouble in so many ways, big trouble. And it needs to be known. It's not enough to just, expect people to, this is my whole philosophy about artivism, like the need to actually let people know what's happening. Otherwise they don't. Things move so quickly these days that people will see an elephant. They won't instinctively know that elephants are in trouble, that their numbers have dwindled over the years, that they could realistically go extinct in not very long. That message needs to be put out. Otherwise people just don't know.
100%. That connection is so important. And realizing that we are one and the same as nature, and just like, nature is struggling and dwindling so much, our survival depends on us